What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Walkout Podcast.
We talk about fights, news, and more. And today we're going to be covering and previewing the UFC 324 event taking place this weekend, where we have Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett for the lightweight interim title. But we're not going to start there. We're going to start with the, well, you could say prelims, but we're going to be covering. We usually just cover the main card, but today we're going to be covering the last fight on the prelims as well, because for some reason they put Umar Nurmagomedov versus Figgy on the prelims when it really should have been on the main card, right?
Yeah, very, very weird. I mean, I don't know how
Yeah.
they thought of this because Umar is literally the, I think he's ranked at number 2 in bantamweight, and a lot of
Yeah.
us think that he should be the next one in line for the title. But as you said, we simply can't leave this fight out because it's such a high caliber. And I mean, Figgy as well, a former, of course, flyweight champion. Um, Talking of the fight itself, I mean, obviously, Umar is a huge favorite here, and for good reason, I think. He's not the most exciting fighter, obviously, but he's very, very dominant. And being the age he is as well, I mean, he's 30 now, but when I say age, I mean more like MMA age, if you get what I mean, the amount of good experience he's had, because he hasn't had that many fights, good high level fights, should I say, that tells a lot. It's basically like Sandhagen, Merab, and Bautista that you can go off of. Um, and I mean, is there a case to make for Figgy since he's such a huge underdog here? I'm not sure. He has a very good ground game, of course. We don't need to go into that too much because everyone knows that. And he has some crisp striking, has to be said. But for me, it's the fact that Umar is one of the best guys in the division, and Fig is 38. That's a lot, especially in that low of a weight class as well. So for me, this is just a matter of how Umar wins. I don't know if you disagree or if you agree with that.
Yeah, no, I agree actually, because it's as you said, the skill differential at this point, maybe Figgy for some years ago when he was the champ could have been a different matchup, but Figgy is, as you said, 38 now, and Umar is still young, still up and coming, and although he hasn't had that many super high level fights, he looks very, very complete and very secure whenever he does fight. And regarding whoever the opponent is, the only real guy who has been able to unsettle him is maybe Merab, when obviously Merab won versus Umar in his first title defense, I believe it was. So, I mean, yeah, it's a matter of the method here for Umar. And speaking of Figgy, you talked about if he has any strong points here, and yeah, that could definitely be the jiu-jitsu, the on the ground, the grappling, and I think that he's, the threat of maybe doing a counter submission, something of the sort, could definitely, unsettle Umar, and I think that Umar will go for it. He did went pretty safe against Batista, and I don't think that will change here. And I think that he will win a pretty clear unanimous decision. And that is what I think. Do you agree with that?
I mean, that was my first pick, but I could very well be wrong here, but I actually reckon that he's gonna go for finish because what happened in the Batista fight is before the fight, people said, okay, you have this one after because the Merab fight was pretty close, even though it was decisive. It was a very competitive fight from Umar, and a lot of people thought he gassed out, and they said if he had a bit better cardio, he actually could have won that one. And regardless of that, going into the Batista fight, people said, okay, if he has a good solid performance and wins here, he's back on track for a title fight, right? And then he fights Batista. It isn't exciting, sorry, but it is decisive and it's a very good performance. And what happens? Does he get a title fight or a title eliminator or something like that? No, he gets put on the prelims. So I actually think that even though Umar seems to have quite a safety first approach often, I do reckon that a 38-year-old Figgy who is a lot smaller as well. Figgy is a small bantamweight, and Umar is a very big bantamweight. I actually think that he's gonna use that to his advantage and just. I do reckon that Umar's gonna get the submission here, and maybe I'm wrong. But if he doesn't here, I mean, when is he gonna get it? Is it just gonna be a grappler treating every MMA fight as a total grappling match? So for that reason, like I said, might be a bad pick, but I'm actually going to predict a submission win for Umar here, probably like round 3, I would say. But like I said, I think that the best pick might be a decision if you look at Umar's resume and how he usually wins his fights. But something in me tells me that it's going to be a submission here. Um, but we'll see on that one for sure. Right, moving up then to the main card, because as you mentioned, this was the last fight on the prelims. We have Arnold Allen taking on Jean Silva in a very, very close matchup, I believe, at least. Do you have a favorite going into this one?
I mean, yeah, this is, as you said, a pretty close matchup, and although, a lot of people, at least I've been hearing, are leaning towards Jean Silva here, and of course, even though he lost versus Lopez, that is still Diego Lopez, maybe the second best featherweight in the division, and going to Arnold Allen, sure, it is a step down, but still, I believe that Arnold Allen is good enough for Jean Silva, and I think that Arnold Allen, he has a good chin, he has good striking, he's just, I think, pretty well rounded, decent takedown defense as well, and I think that Jean Silva, he may look stylish, and he does have power, he does have submission threat, but can he hold up versus someone who can, counter that, and then just give him something back in terms of striking, on a consistent basis. This is a free rounder, and I think that if Arnold Allen does what he needs to do in this fight and just pick up points on the striking and defend as much as possible the takedowns, which it's worth mentioning also that Jean Silva is more of a jiu-jitsu practitioner here,
Yeah.
so he's not going to be a Russian style sambo wrestler who's going to go across the octagon for a takedown and ragdoll Arnold Allen here. It's also, I think Arnold Allen is a bit bigger here and might be heavier in the octagon. We'll see. So I'm going with Allen here. I think that he can offer a threat, and I think that he can be consistent over 3 rounds, and just tag Silva over and over until I think he can win a pretty narrow decision win here. Do you agree with that, or do you have another take on this fight?
Yeah, I actually do agree with that because for me, this is the hardest fight to call on the card.
Yeah,
But for some reason, I do actually think, like you said, I think that Allen will take a close decision here, and I can just see him, keeping Silva on his jab, keeping the range because, as you said, he has a slight reach advantage, I think. Um, and yeah, of course, Silva is very good, but I I am I don't know if I can say charmed, but the fact that um, Allen, sorry, has um, he's just mixed with a lot higher competition. And even though he lost against Max Holloway, for instance, but Max Holloway is one of the greatest strikers, in my opinion, we've ever seen in the UFC. And he went 5 rounds with Holloway without getting finished a couple of years ago. That's really solid. Um, Before that, of course, beating Dan Hooker is very good. Dan Hooker is a very skilled guy. It was at featherweight though, and as we know, Dan Hooker is now a lightweight, so you could make the argument that it was a bit undersized for that one. But my point is, do think that the level that Allen has mixed at, and the fact that it's been out for 1.5 years, I think it is now, he should have worked a lot on his defects, so to speak.
yeah.
And I do like his chances in this one, but a lot for me comes down to if Silva has adjusted accordingly as he should after Lopez fight. Because in the Lopez fight, as we all know, he went in with his chin pretty high up and didn't really guard too well, and he paid the price for that. So hopefully he's learned his lesson. But if he comes into this one being a bit arrogant, I don't think he will be, but he has showed some tendencies of that before. I think it could be a case for Allen to just piece him up here because Allen is I think he's underrated in his striking from a lot of people. So all in all, I actually agree with you that I think Allen is a good pick for this one. It is a close fight. For me, it's a 50-50 because especially when you look at the odds, the fact that Jean Silva is a pretty heavy favorite, I am tempted to go with Allen. And I actually agree with you. I think he's going to close out like a 29-28 decision here in this one. Um, but yeah, moving on then up the card, we have one of the fights that I'm most excited for. Maybe not the most technical fight, but Walter Cortes-Acosta taking on Derek Lewis. I mean, we love the heavyweights, even though, like I said, might not be the highest level, but there's something special about just a heavyweight scrap in the UFC, right?
Yeah, there's gonna be blood.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think
It's
about
gonna
this one
see.
then?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's gonna be a lot of power on show. It's always this when it's heavyweight fighting, but especially these two. Derek Lewis may be out of his prime, but still he does get knockout and he does have power, and that won't go away, even though he's not that fast anymore. And that I think can hurt him versus someone like Waldes Cortes-Acosta, who not only has power, he also has speed and technique, and especially, he has picked up some form lately, and he has had quite a few fights in 2025. He had quite a few fights in 2025, and yeah, didn't have a single loss, just a clean record as of at least the past year. And I think that will help him here. He's going to be feeling, confident going into this, and someone like Derek Lewis, I don't think that the mental side will hurt him. He's quite a character, and he does seem to have a lot of self-confidence. He doesn't really care. Uh, and sure, I think that he won't go into this thinking that I'm gonna be outmatched by Cortes-Acosta, but I do think that that is what we will see happening regardless. There will be a bunch of power on show between them
Yeah.
during the fight, but I think it will end with Cortes-Acosta eventually, after Drake Lewis uh, um, maybe gasses out a bit, and Cortes-Acosta might find an opening. I think that he puts Derek Lewis out of there, and I think that Acosta, for me at least, he gets a knockout here eventually. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I guess I do. I'm a bit hesitant because almost everyone loves Derek Lewis. He's such a
Yeah.
character. Um, but as you said, Father Time is undefeated, and Derek Lewis is 40 years of age. And there are cases where someone who's old hasn't had that many miles on the clock, but Derek Lewis really has. I mean, he's been fighting in the UFC for so long. For I'm looking it up now. It's he made his debut for 12 years ago. Um, so
Damn, 12 years.
and 12 years of fighting heavyweights. Imagine all the damage he's took. I mean, of course, he's a skilled guy, but correctly as you said, he doesn't have the speed, and that's what I would have liked if I would pick someone to beat Cortes Acosta here. Derek Lewis has that one punch knockout power, of course he does, but that doesn't really matter if you can keep him on the distance. And I do reckon that Cortes Acosta has the skills to do that. And also agreeing with you said there with the fact that Acosta, sorry, should be in much better shape cardio wise. So he should be able to tire Derek Lewis around, maybe, fooling him into the dead space a bit, moving around the octagon, getting Derek Lewis to chase him because Derek Lewis knows that he should go for a knockout. That is only way to win, in my opinion. Um,
Yeah.
and for that reason, I do think that he's going to get tired, and Cortes Acosta is going to get a finish here, possibly in the second or third round, maybe, I reckon. But I would love to be wrong. I think it would be very nice to see Derek Lewis get a win. But well, Cortes Acosta has been so active as well, as you rightly said. He's, I mean, his latest loss was against Sergey Pavlovich, and Pavlovich, in my opinion, is like I personally think is the second best heavyweight in the UFC right now. Um, and to lose against Pavlovich on points isn't too bad. I mean, he stayed alive against Pavlovich, which is very hard to do. And if he can do that, I reckon that he can stay away from Lewis as well. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I also think that it's going to be a finish from Cortes-Acosta here.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a fun fight to watch at least, right? It's gonna be a firecracker, maybe,
Yeah,
hopefully.
and what I'm hoping is that Derek Lewis is, he knows that he has to go for the knockout, and sometimes that can
Yeah,
be very exciting to watch because maybe he gets it, but he's gonna go for it. So either he gets it or he gets countered and gets knocked out, and it's hard to say, but we always know love watching some heavyweight knockout chaos. So at least it's gonna be good entertainment, hopefully, at least.
yeah, exactly. And speaking of, entertainment here, we're moving on to the next fight, the co-main event, where we have Sugar Sean O'Malley, who wants a knockout. He's talked about a lot. He needs a knockout, and he's gonna be going up against Song Yadong, who, we haven't seen maybe as much of as we would have wanted to, but he's a pretty good fighter at least. Pretty decent for the division, pretty complete. But does he have what it takes to go up versus Sean O'Malley and stay in there for 5 rounds? And does Sean O'Malley come prepared for the 5 rounds here? What is your take on this fight?
I mean, it's very hard to tell because Sean O'Malley usually has very good cardio. Um, but as you correctly said, about 2 weeks ago, the co-main of Kelly Harrison versus Amanda Nunes got cancelled, and then
Yeah,
Sean O'Malley was moved up and was informed that he had to go 2 extra rounds. And I watched an interview with his coach, Tim Walsh, and he looked a bit worried, to be honest. But I'm not sure that they actually are. I think they might be double bluffing. Um, and this is also a case of Sean O'Malley has to go 2 extra round, but of course so does Song Yadong. So it's not like it's uneven. And even though Song Yadong is a smaller guy, you would typically say that he should have better cardio, but I'm not sure if that is either, to be honest. And what I do reckon is that um, Song Yadong is 5'8". Sean O'Malley, as we know, is 5'11". He came up here. I was pretty sure he's at least 6 foot, but he has a significant reach advantage of like four
yeah.
inches against Song Yadong, and I reckon that's going to be a really big advantage. I know it's like cliche to say so, but just to keep him on the end of your range, I think it's going to pick him apart. And for me, this is a bit like the Umar one. It's more of a question of how Sean O'Malley wins. And I know, as you said, that he wants the knockout. Of course, everyone does. He has good power, of course, but it's not like he finishes everyone he goes in there with. And Song Yadong is going to be very aware as well of the power of Sean O'Malley. So I think it's a difficult one to call on way of winning. There's no doubt in my mind that Sean O'Malley wins this one. But maybe Song Yadong can cause an upset here. But for me, I reckon that it's really difficult actually. Maybe I need a minute or two to think here. What do you reckon? Do you think he takes it first of all? Do you think Sean O'Malley wins? And do you think it's a knockout then or just a points win?
I mean, it's it's difficult to predict now that they changed it to the 5 rounds, as you covered, and yeah, you know, Sean O'Malley's coach might have said that it's or might have sort of shown that hinted at that maybe it isn't for the best for them, but still, I mean, I think that just the reach advantage here, you covered that. I think it's just too big, and I think that Yadong, he's decent for the division. He's pretty well rounded, but is he good enough to stand and strike with O'Malley? And if he isn't, is he good enough in a sort of is he good enough in the grappling to be able to use that for 5 entire rounds versus Sean O'Malley and just to win points? I don't think so. He's not a Merab. He's not Umar. He isn't that level of pedigree, and that is who Sean O'Malley has fought 2 times. He fought Merab,
Yeah.
5 rounders as well. So he has that experience at least, even if it didn't go as planned. He still had that experience. I do think that O'Malley actually gets this done at least. I think it. varies a little bit depending on his confidence. But so I don't think that he will knock him out. I'm going to predict a KO here, but I'm not going to predict like a first or second round KO because I don't think that he has that confidence really from the get go. I think that they're going to be, sort of exchanging a lot early, and O'Malley is going to find out that wait, I have a lot of I have a he's really gonna feel that reach advantage, I believe, in the first rounds, and then eventually, when he builds up the confidence, I think he's gonna unload. Um, when he finds out that he can quite easily keep Yadong at range and outstrike him, and I think that he's gonna get something like let's say a third round knockout, maybe. I believe.
All right. Yeah, I think that's a good pick. And I don't want to sound here like I'm copying you, but that, as you were speaking, I was thinking about it, and I do reckon that that's a
Yeah,
pretty good pick, actually. A late finish for Sean, because it doesn't have to be like a one punch knockout. Or it can be like just the fact that Sean O'Malley can keeping him at range and just chew up his leg with the calf
yeah,
kicks, like jab his head off so that it gets a bit busted up, loses some vision, gets tired. As we always heard, especially those body shots makes it harder to breathe. It like slows you down even if you're not as active. So yeah, I reckon that the level difference will show here, and a bit like I mentioned with the Umar fight, Sean O'Malley definitely wants to make a statement because the bantamweight division right now is stacked. There's a lot of good contenders who wants the shot at the belt. So to get a spotlight like this, a bit unexpected in the co-main event, I think Sean O'Malley is gonna want to make the most of it. And a bit like you mentioned as well there, that he doesn't want to go 5 rounds. He's not prepared for that. And what's the easiest way? Yeah, just to finish the guy, right? And of course, that's
yeah,
easier said than done. But just quickly, you mentioned it as well. But I think we really need to look at the fact that who has Song Yadong been in there with? Some decent guys for the division, of course, but Sean O'Malley, even if you don't look at the losses and wins, it's Merab 2 times, the best bantamweight ever. Um, Marlon Vera, sure, not the best, but Aljamain Sterling, also one of the best bantamweights of all time. Peter Yan, also. Those three are possibly, they're all like top 5. So to be been in there with all of them and getting 2 of 4 wins is really quite impressive. And does it mean that he's gonna beat Peter Yan again if they fight? Not, of course, it doesn't. But does it mean that he can use all that, you know, can you say the lectures he should have learned from those fights? Yeah, I think he should, and that really should solidify the fact that he can piece up Song Yadong here. So I reckon, as you said, it's going to be a finish for Sean O'Malley actually, and I agree that I think it's going to be late at least, like fourth or fifth round probably. I reckon. Um, but then I guess we're on to the main event here. Like you said before, the interim lightweight championship. Of course, Ilia Topuria has vacated, but recently come out to say that he's going to face the winner here, hopefully in the spring. I think you mentioned like April or May, possibly June on the White House card. But regardless, it's Justin Gaethje taking on Paddy Pimblett. I mean, this one should be really, really exciting. But who do you actually think wins this one?
I mean, yeah, just as you said, this one is gonna be really exciting. It might not. I mean, some people, and I probably agree with that, that maybe it doesn't hold the pedigree for a real, at least as of right now, a real title fight. Neither of these two are maybe at that level yet, where you want to see them be the champion. But regardless of that, this is the situation we have, and Ilia Topuria vacated, so now we have this fight, and yeah, in a what you say, in a vacuum, I think that this fight is really good either way. Just that this happens is really good because Gaethje versus Pimblett is the type of matchup that you want to see. I think that it's gonna become quite scrappy. Both of them have power. Obviously, we know Gaethje has power, but Pimblett does have power as well. We saw that versus Michael Chandler, and he also has a good sense of mixing it up. He can get takedowns, he can get ground and pound, and he can get good striking on the feet and
Yeah.
kicks, different types of. He has a lot of variation. I just mean in his game, and so I think that will work to his favor here, and I think that he's gonna take this one eventually. I'm not really sure, maybe not super early, but I think that he's gonna submit Justin Gaethje. He might, catch him out with the striking and eventually just get on his back and submit him or ground and pound. But I'm gonna just, I'm just gonna predict a submission here in, let's say, I think maybe third round. I don't think that it's gonna go 5 rounds. If it does go 5 rounds, I think the odds maybe slightly go up in Gaethje's favor, because I believe that if this goes 5 rounds, then that probably means that Gaethje, he can probably handle the grappling, which I will be surprised about. So I'd pick something like the third round. I'm not really. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to repeat too much of what you said because my analysis is very, very similar. So I'm just going to say that I agree with the fact that I reckon Pimble is going to get this a submission. Like you said, ground and pound is very possible, but I think a submission in like round 4 possibly would be my prediction. And yeah, I think everything you said was spot on. So like I said, I'm not going to repeat any of it. But what I do think is interesting is, of course, Pimblett is a betting favorite. On some odds, he's bigger. On other, he's more slight favorite, but still a favorite. But what I've seen some people who pick Gaethje say is the fact that it is the striking, it is the power. He has some good power. And of course, as we know, most notably, he knocked out Dustin Poirier with a very good head kick a couple of years ago. Um, we both are going to pick Pimlet, and we've covered why. But do you reckon that the power of Gaethje, is it something to be scared of if you are Paddy Pimlet, or do you think he's going to handle it just fine?
Yeah, I mean it's hard to say because, as you said, Gaethje has a lot of power, and he also does have variation. But I just think that Paddy has that too. He also has maybe not this exact same level of power of as Gaethje, but he does have power. He can definitely, maybe not get a clean knock, not as much as of a clean knockout, but he can definitely unsettle his opponent and get a knockdown, get them on the ground, and then finish them that way, I think.
Yeah,
And we saw that versus Michael Chandler. So, yeah, there is maybe a slight power differential here, but I just think that Paddy Pimblett, he has a greater variety in his game, and he can just mix it up. And I think that that's gonna make it so that Gaethje can't really, he can't really just he can't really just throw out a power head kick from nowhere without maybe getting taken down in response. And Pimblett is quick also. He's not a slow, he's not a super heavy, or regardless of what he does outside of camp. He's not in when he's in the octagon. He is pretty quick, and he's not that stationary, and he has, I think, a decent in fight IQ, you could say.
yeah.
And I don't know if Gaethje really has that. He's sort
No,
of just
he doesn't.
right.
He really
We saw
doesn't.
that yeah, at UFC 300. He doesn't really know when to pick his uh, his battle maybe, and he wants to go guns, a blazing every time. So yeah, he could. Of course, always, when you have Justin Gaethje, he could get a flash knockout. He could do that, but I just don't think that it's it's not likely. We're talking about probabilities here, and it it's more like what's most likely to happen here. And I think that Pimblett, um, evading that knockout power is most likely, and getting a finish himself.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Just looking through Gaethje's resume now, I'm trying to find something else because, of course, like you said, he got schooled by Max Holloway and eventually slept. And otherwise, I mean, the head kick against Poirier is good, but Poirier had taken a lot of damage previous to that. But it's a good win. But other than that, I mean, Rafael Fiziev has fought twice and gone to decisions. One of them I actually thought he might have lost the first one. And I mean, Fiziev is a much smaller guy. And so if you can't knock him out with your striking, are you going to knock Paddy out? Of course you can. But I am actually really impressed with Paddy's technical aspect and his striking. He's known for his grappling and his jiu-jitsu, which is, of course, world class. But his striking is very good. And I remember Paddy saying after and of course, it's easy when you know how the fight panned out, but after Charles Oliveira fought Topuria and got knocked out, I remember Paddy's face and being after he said, like, how can you go that close to Poirier? How can you move that close to someone you know who has power? And even though Gaethje's striking isn't as good as Poirier's, obviously, he still has a lot of power, and Paddy is aware of that. And when I rewatched Paddy's fight with Michael Chandler, which was his last previous fight, right? He I mean, he did give Chandler a lot of respect, and Chandler is, in my opinion, one of the worst lightweight contenders in the recent years, and he still had, kept him on his range. He had a lot of respect for him, and if he does that against Michael Chandler, and he will definitely do it against Justin Gaethje, I think, and I reckon that that's Gaethje's only possibility to win because, as we all know, he actually is an amazing wrestler, but we've never seen it because, as you rightly mentioned, his fight IQ isn't all that for a top fighter. Whereas I think Paddy's is really good. And not to go on for too long, but just quickly, as you mentioned, his punch selection and his striking is very, very crisp as well. And he picks out his shots well. He mixes it up with leg kicks, with jabs, with hooks. I mean, he's really good. He's an all-round very good fighter from everything I've seen. So for me, it's no doubt in my mind that
Yeah.
Paddy will win this one. And it seemed like you thought the same thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and especially, the last thing you said there when you said, that of course Gaethje, he has a lot of tools. It's not that he isn't skilled. He has a lot of, he has, wrestling, and he has, different. He has a variation in his striking, both kicks and just normal boxing. But
Yeah.
the difference here is sort of the IQ, I feel like, and how they mix it up. Paddy, he can do all of that, and he does it quite cleanly in the octagon. He really knows how to use all the tools he has in his kit. Or like Gaethje, he doesn't really. He sort of like locks in on one thing and then on the next thing, and it's not as controlled, maybe you
Yeah.
could say. So I
Yeah, that's
think
true.
that's a major thing here in this fight, and yeah, but we seem to be uh, quite in agreement here, regarding Paddy Pimblett and how we think he gets this done.
Yeah.
So but it's gonna be a good fight. I think it's gonna be a good fight regardless. There's gonna be some striking early. It has to be, even if he gets a submission later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I would be very surprised if this fight goes the distance. I mean, surely this has to be
Yeah,
finished.
yeah, absolutely. I don't think that this is gonna go 5 rounds without some sort of finish. It's not
No.
possible.
And as you said, maybe this wasn't the best fight to make for the interim belt, but why did they do it? Because it's the first fight card on the Paramount Plus era, and they want to make the main event a banger, just viewing
Yeah,
wise. Maybe not for us hardcore fans who want the best matchups, sporting wise, who deserves it, because maybe then it would have been Arman or somebody else. But we know this is going to be fireworks, and hopefully that's what we're getting on Saturday.
yeah, absolutely.
But that's all right, because that was the main event. So thank you guys a lot for watching and listening, and we look forward to UFC 324 this Saturday in the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. And of course, you can catch up with us again next week when we'll be doing a review and our instant reaction to this fight card.
Yeah, see you guys on the review later next week.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe. We'll catch you then.
Goodbye. Bye.